Hey everyone, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. I am here with my liquid courage as always, and today we are going to talk about all of the books that I read in August. Before we get into the books, I just wanted to thank everybody for sticking with me the last couple of weeks. If you caught any of my vlogs leading up to this video, my family and I recently moved from Chicago to Michigan. So this is our first video in my new house. We are still definitely settling in, getting everything exactly how we want it, unpacking. I painted this wall pink, but I am finally getting back into my groove with reading. I got a library card for the library, which is just like 5 minutes away. And I am so shocked that I got so much reading done in the month of August. Unfortunately, since in August I packed up all of my books, everything was read digitally or on audiobook, so I sadly don't have any physical copies to hold up for you today, but we're just gonna throw some pictures up here and talk about what I read. My average rating this month, it's a little low for 7 books. It was about a 3.96, and that is because the books that I didn't like this month, I really didn't like as much, and then the books that I really liked, I really liked. And when we do my wrap-ups, I always start with my lowest rated and work my way up to the highest rated. So starting in the 2.75 star range, I have 2 books. The first is For Aunties and a Wedding by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I was really looking forward to this book because I loved Dial A for Aunties, which is the first book in this series that she has going on. I got this one from the library, luckily, and it just really let me down. We're following Madeline once again, and she is planning her wedding to her fiance Nathan, who is like her college sweetheart, and we met him in the first book. She's super excited to be planning her wedding since she has been in the wedding industry with her aunties for the last few years. They have a family business together, and her aunties find another family business very similar to theirs, and they almost seem too good to be true. Madeline decides though to throw caution to the wind. She thinks that maybe she's just being uptight and nervous about planning her wedding, and they book this family. And then when they get all the way to England where this wedding is taking place, Madeline discovers that maybe possibly this family is like the family, as in like a mob. From there, Madeline and her aunties go on full defense mode. They really can't lash out because this family claims that they know what happened in the first book, and they don't want this secret to get out, especially since they're just moving past it. Then they just start trying to make sure that this mob family doesn't ruin Madeline's wedding day. Dial A for Aunties I thought was really charming, and the over-the-topness was super fun. It was really easy to go along with, even though it was a little extreme sometimes. In For Aunties and a Wedding, we really don't get any breather in between all of the absurdity that is going on. And because everything that's going on is so absurd, you don't really get a chance to care about Madeline, her wedding, her fiance.
Any of it really.
This book to me really read like one of those choose your own adventure apps, like those like saucy games where you choose, do I kiss him or do I walk away? Every moment of the book read like one of those apps. And it was just so minute by minute. A lot of it was really boring, or a lot of it was Madeline rehashing the same thoughts of her panic and anxiety about the situation that's happening. And it just wasn't a very enjoyable read for me, and that's why it was a 2.75 stars. The second book that I rated 2.75 stars this month was One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. I don't know, this could be just me. I don't read a lot of these uplifting, heartwarming kinds of books very often, and I have seen a lot of people like it, but it just wasn't it for me. One Italian Summer for me was like if a loaf of white bread woke up in the morning and decided to be a book one day. I feel like Rebecca Searle writes like a 75-year-old woman trying to imagine what a 30-year-old woman is like. It was just so hallmarky to me and so unenjoyable that I wish that I had gone with my first instincts to just DNF it when I was a few pages in. We are following Katie. She has just recently lost her mother after a battle with cancer, and she loves her mom. Everyone loves her mom. Her mom always has the best recipe, the greatest cookies, such a smart design style. She is or wanted to be an interior decorator. Everybody goes to her for everything. And so when she dies, Katie is just really floundering. Before her mother died, Katie and her had booked a trip to Italy, which is somewhere that her mom had spent a lot of time in her early 30s. And Katie was really looking forward to experiencing that with her mom. And so she decides to take this trip alone to grieve and try to come back to herself. And also, she's like maybe thinking about leaving her husband. When she gets there though, she runs into this woman who is her mother as a 30-year-old woman too, and the two of them are able to strike up a friendship, and Katie is getting to know her mother as a young woman. There is a time travel element that doesn't totally make sense here. There are hints to the time travel elements that kind of go over like a lead balloon. Like the hints, I think, were things that most people might not guess at, and so for that to be the clue that there is like a time travel element, it was a little clunky. She meets this guy at this resort and she's maybe toying around with the idea of having a little fling while she's there. And you never know if like she actually likes him. You don't know if you're supposed to. Sometimes it seems like she really does, but the way that she interacts with him is just so awkward. I don't know, 2.75, it wasn't for me. I didn't have any books in the 3-star range this month, so we're moving right on up to the 4-star area. And my first book that I rated 4.25 this month was Blood Sugar by Sasha Rothschild. This is another book that I heard about from Haley Hughes, similar to Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance. And like that book, I am also hearing nobody but Haley and now myself talk about it, and it was so good. We are following a therapist whose husband recently died very suddenly. So when she's called into the police department, she thinks that it's sort of to tie up loose ends, answer any further questions they have about his sudden death, and she's just gonna wipe her hands of it and go home. When she enters the questioning room though, the detective has 4 pictures laid out in front of him, one being of her husband and the other 3 being 3 people that she has killed in her past. The detective definitely thinks that she killed her husband, but this is not a spoiler. Her husband is the one person of those 4 pictures that she hasn't killed, but she did definitely kill those other 3. And so now she is really doing a dance with the detective to make sure that not only does she not get accused of her husband's murder, but that she doesn't get stuck with the other 3 as well. And we get this really nice dual timeline. We have her in the interrogation room being questioned by the detective. It's super tense. You really feel like you're holding your breath and you're just like waiting for that next picture to be turned over as he's going through them one by one. And then we get the flashbacks of the lead up to each of those other 3 deaths. I thought that this book was super fast paced. I really liked the moral grayness of our main character. We know from the get-go that she is not innocent. The book opens with her murdering a child while she was also a child. And you just get her justification behind them. You really don't hate her, even though you know she is not innocent. And I just thought that was really interesting, and the author did a really great job pulling that off. The only reason this wasn't like a 5-star or a little bit higher was just the ending. Our main character, she has this little revelation at the end, or a resolution of sorts, that I just thought was kind of silly, a little cheesy. And I didn't particularly like that for her, but all of the rest of it I really enjoyed. The next book that I rated 4.25 was Nightcrawling by Layla Motley. I just have to talk for a second about the fact that this woman started writing this book when she was 17 years old. She's 20 now, and her book was just picked up by Oprah herself for her own book club. That is so insane to me. And this author, she's 20 and wrote this book, which was honestly incredible. I also highly recommend listening to this book on audiobook. That is how I read this one. I was listening to it as I was driving from Chicago to Detroit in my U-Haul truck, and it was like a 4.5-hour drive after a long ass day of moving, and this audiobook was so engrossing and so good that it made that drive feel like nothing. The audiobook narrator just did such a really good job at capturing the emotion and the intensity, and sometimes just the joy that is within the pages of this book. Incredible job, can't recommend it enough. And in Nightcrawling, we are following Kiara. She's a 17-year-old Black girl living in a really crappy apartment with her brother. Her father has recently died. Her mother is living in a halfway house. And really the only people that she has in her corner are her brother Marcus and the neighbor boy Trevor, whose mother is a drug addict and is very absent. Rent in their shitty apartment building is going up, so Kiara is really struggling to find a way to make money. Her brother is really obsessed with the idea of becoming a famous rapper, especially after their Uncle Ty got famous and his career really took off. And he's just not focused on making money or helping the family. And so Kiara really feels like she is alone. And one night she goes out, she gets drunk, she has a miscommunication with a stranger in which she gets paid for some activities. And she sees the opportunity in this to make some money and at least keep a roof over her and Marcus's head, as well as the neighbor boys. From there, we follow Kiara into her journey nightcrawling. Layla Motley does not glamorize this lifestyle in any way. She constantly is putting Kiara in danger throughout the telling of the story. And I really liked the way that she told it, in a way that these moments with these men, they're very flat, pointed. There's not any like juicy details or anything with those encounters. But then when she's with her family and her best friend and Trevor next door, that's when you start to see this like intimacy and joy and just these really beautiful descriptions of being connected to these people. I thought it was a great book. I think that for a first book, you can definitely see some ticks of the author in there, which is why it wasn't rated higher. And it's just something I'm trying to get over, because I think it is a book that will really stick with me for a long time. So like, writing aside, it would definitely be a 4.75 out of 5. We really get into some injustices. Kiara finds herself wrapped up in a scandal involving the Oakland Police Department. So you're really scared for her. You're really getting a lot of social commentary about just the web that police officers kind of stick out there, and the way that they wrap people up and make their lives miserable. I also really appreciated her author's note at the end, in which she was just talking about how growing up as a young Black girl in Oakland, she heard a lot about how to protect her brothers, her father, her cousins, just like the Black men in her life. And there was very little regard for the Black women. And so she sort of felt growing up like her life mattered a little bit less. And just the way that Black women, Black sex workers, Black trans women are often heavily victimized by police especially. She really wanted to tell that story and, shed light on women like Kiara. So I really appreciated it, love this book, and I really cannot wait to see what Layla Motley writes next. And the last book that I rated 4.25 was My Body by Emily Ratajkowski. I like the universe. I'm very interested in Emily Ratajkowski, and I think it is because she is so freakishly beautiful that you just feel instantly pulled into like whatever she's doing. And My Body is a collection of essays where she talks about how she is often just seen as a body. She started modeling as a young girl to make extra money, but she really soared to fame in that like shitty Blurred Lines music video where she's dancing basically naked. And even before the music video, she sees the ways in which people looked at her as more of an object than a person. And then especially after that music video, the way that she was able to use her body for more opportunities, to make more money. And I think it's the first essay she writes about her experience filming that music video. I think that essay really serves as the thesis of the whole book, in which she is in a room of other female models. The entire director's production crew is all women. She's feeling empowered. She's feeling amazing. Everyone else there is feeling empowered and amazing. And then it's when the male star that is paying for the whole thing walks in, and it suddenly becomes aware that all of the women are there because of one man. She goes over a lot of interesting concepts in this book, especially as it comes to her image of her own self and her own body being used in ways that she doesn't consent to, art being produced of her body that she could never afford, the way that people are capitalizing on her body in ways that she is not able to and has never consented to. Super interesting. And I think it's like a really vital read for this time of our culture that's just really obsessed with putting our image out there and social media. As somebody that is like a little bit interested in celebrity culture, I just love seeing how she looks at social media and how it feels to have millions of people watching her every post and sort of the power that comes along with that. The reason I didn't rate it a little bit higher is it felt like there was something missing. I was reading some other reviews and I came across an article in The Atlantic reviewing My Body, and the author points out how so much of this book is directed at the men in Emily's world and how they react to her, or how she has been assaulted by them, and the very valid story she's telling about being in a business and selling her body in a way to a male gaze. But she never does really get into how her image could impact other women. I think especially her body is looked at as like the perfect body, and she knows it. And I think that I can see where maybe she wasn't trying to create enemies out of other women and kind of celebrating the fact that bodies are bodies. But it did feel a little bit like she was putting a blinder on to how like an average woman would be reacting to her, and not just other women who are playing the same Hollywood game as her. But other than that, great writing, great essays, super heartbreaking. She really goes to a lot of places. So definitely check the trigger warnings on this one, especially if sexual assault and things like that are triggering for you. But I really do think that this is an essential read in this day and age. My next book is rated 4.5, and this is actually a very exciting book for me because it's the first time since starting my YouTube channel that I was approached by an author to read their book ahead of its release. And that is The Art of Darkness by S. Elizabeth. I was a little bit nervous because I do not read a lot of art books, and that is what this is. This is an art book examining the way that art has approached topics of darkness throughout history. The book is broken up into 5 categories, I think, and we're looking at nightmares, death, disease, bodily ailments, and mental illness. S. Elizabeth's writing is very friendly, super approachable. A lot of the reason why I don't read art history books, even though I like looking at it, is because it's so pretentious. Like,
oh, you didn't know?
that is not this book at all. I thought it was super approachable. The pieces of art that she highlights in this book are just so stunning. It is a very quick read. Each section is led in with a beautiful introduction by her, and each piece of art gets a tiny little description of the historical context and what we're looking at, which was especially helpful for me because when I'm looking at art, I can decide very quickly if I like it or don't like it. But in terms of examining art and analyzing it, I have no idea what's happening. She really holds your hand and guides you through it. Art, stunning, loved looking at it. The only reason why this wasn't a full 5-star book for me is because S. Elizabeth does mention the state of our world right now and what modern times are looking like in regards to the pandemic. And she does feature pieces of art from 2020 and onward. And I think that with that inclusion, it really feels like she abandoned to get into exactly what was happening in 2020 with the pandemic, with the huge movement around George Floyd's death and the Black Lives Matter movement, all of the pain that came out through art during that time and how it highlighted systemic racism. Really felt like she wanted to mention it, but also she didn't want to go there all the way. And I just wish that she did and sort of looked at the darkness of politics in general. Don't know this for certain, but I do get the sense that S. Elizabeth is not in the United States. So that could be why, but it just felt like a huge omission for me, which is why I can't give it a full 5 stars. But if you're interested in creepy art, the macabre, or even just interested in dipping your toes into reading about art history, then The Art of Darkness is definitely a book you should pick up. And I think it comes out on September 16th. And thank you so much to S. Elizabeth for sending me your book. And the last book that I read in the month of August, my 5-star read this month, it was Any Man by Amber Tamblyn. I remember when Any Man came out in 2018, it was really at the height of the Me Too movement, and it was sort of looked at as like a book to really highlight the times. I sort of ignored it at the time because I know Amber Tamblyn as an actress. I didn't know she was a writer, and I just didn't know what to expect. Whenever an actor starts writing, it's a mixed bag sometimes. And then over the last couple of weeks, Elizabeth from Reading Riley had read it. Brandon Baker has read it. I've seen a few more people who I know and trust in the book community raving about this book. So I got it on audiobook, and wow. I still get goosebumps when I think too hard about this book. First, had to say, I 12 out of 10 recommend listening to this book on audiobook. I was a little bit nervous because there are some mixed media elements with chat rooms, message boards, transcripts from news broadcasts and things like that. I just didn't know how that would play out in the audiobook, so I was a little nervous, and those nerves were quickly put to rest. The audiobook has a full cast of characters. They do an incredible job. We are following a group of men who are bound together by the world's shittiest circumstances, and that is that they are victims of a mysterious woman called Maud. Maud has sexually assaulted these men, she's brutalized them, and none of them can really pinpoint what she looks like, who she is. You get the sense that some of them are not even convinced that she's fully human because she's just so vicious and has been able to fly so far under the radar. We see how these men are coping with having to survive after such a vicious attack. We see how they are building connections with one another. And the writing, it's just so poetic. It's gruesome. I was listening to the audiobook, like holding my breath, full body chills. There's like a stream of consciousness element to some of the parts. There's a character named Pear who is voiced by Mark Maron, a character that I think was honestly written for him. Pear is an aging comic. He is terminally ill and he is a victim of Maud, and he is like a big player in a sexual assault support group in his town. And he goes on this rant just like describing Maud and how animal-like she is and brutal she is. And it's just such an intense several minutes of audio, and I just thought it was so incredible. The audiobook, I really cannot stress enough how well done it is. The book itself, super well done. I love everything that it had to say about how media and society reacts to victims of sexual assault. Amber Tamblyn said she wrote it with male victims because our society as a whole is so desensitized to seeing women having to go through these things. So seeing it happen to men is just a completely different lens. She really goes there. There's like nothing that she shies away from in this book. And at the end of it, I was driving to Grand Rapids for my best friend's birthday party, and I finished it like jaw on the floor of my fucking car. And I just had all this energy about it. I didn't know what to do. And so I left a voice memo for Elizabeth on Instagram because I just had to vocalize how fucking good this book is. It is like 8 out of 5 stars for me. It was so good. I can't recommend it enough. Definitely check your trigger warnings for this one because it is really intense, but I think it's worth the read for sure. Those are all of the books that I read for the month of August. Really varied reading month. I didn't really dabble too long in one genre or another. My ratings are kind of fairly spread out, but I am proud of myself for finishing even 2 books for how busy the month of August has been. September, I am very much looking forward to. I have 2 themed videos that I'm going to be doing very soon, and I am also participating in the Losers Club Readathon hosted by Beth Saul Booked, Elizabeth from Reading Riley, and Ashley from Ashley's Little Library. So stay tuned for my TBR video to see what I'm reading this month. And you know, we're getting into fall. It's spooky vibes from here on out, so I cannot wait to see what the next month has in store. If you are new here, please subscribe to my channel. Like I said, there's a lot of exciting shit coming up, and I hope that you guys will all stick around to see it. Please be sure to like this video, gives me a confidence boost every single time. And leave a comment down below. Have you read any of these 7 books? What is your favorite book from the month of August? I'm very curious to hear from you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy reading and cheers!